Triumph Tiger 900 range has been out long enough now that it's time for a midlife update. And as far as those go, this bike has received quite a significant one, with the most exciting changes happening with the engine. It's still an 888cc 3-cylinder engine, but there are many changes within, and the effect of all those changes is more of everything. Power has gone up, torque has gone up slightly, and with that, Triumph has somehow also claimed a 9% improvement in fuel efficiency. So it's good news all around. Power is now at 108 horsepower. Now this was never a slow engine to begin with. It used to be 95 horsepower, but that is quite a significant jump, and you do feel it in the riding experience. Like I said, the old 900 was not a slow bike, but this one just feels more potent, more reactive. It feels like there's more to give whenever you open the throttle. It's a quick motorcycle by any means, and it's up there with the quickest in the segment. But that's not to say that this is not an engine with a chill side as well. It's a beautiful motor to ride around at lower speeds, very flexible. It doesn't mind high gears, 6th gear, 40 kilometers an hour, going over speed breakers in 3rd and 4th gear. This engine will do it all. There's also the fueling, which is really nicely judged. So you can go down to low RPMs, get on the gas and get a very smooth and natural response. And that is nice, not just off-road, but also in traffic. And it means you don't have to use the clutch very much. Speaking of the clutch, that is a pretty decently light unit for a bike of this size. And in general, this is just a really nice engine to live with. Another aspect of this engine that I've really grown to appreciate over the years is its character. Now, when Triumph changed over from the old 800 to the 900, people were upset, and that's because there was a big change in character. That was a very sports bike-like engine. It sounded like a street triple or a Daytona. Great sound at high RPMs and very smooth. This was very different. But today, I'm sure I prefer this engine in a Tiger. One of the reasons for that is the way it sounds. Now, what you get here is a typical Triumph 3-cylinder sound. There is some whistle. It sounds familiar but also very different, much deeper. So low RPMs is like a twin, high RPMs it revs. You saw how responsive it is. It's a raspy, deep, angry growl, and I think it makes for a great companion in a motorcycle like this. That being said, this motor has never been perfect, and Triumph has tried to improve some of its issues, the biggest of them being vibrations. What they've done this time around is that there are heavier bar ends and there's rubber damping for the handlebar mounts. And yes, there is a noticeable improvement in the vibration. It is smooth up to 100 kilometers an hour. You just about start to feel the vibrations mildly in the foot pegs at about 110. Cross 130, 140, and that's when it starts to build up. It's not a typical high-frequency vibration like you get with single-cylinder engines. It's more of a thrum from the engine that you feel in the bars, that you feel in the pegs and in the seat. You do feel it at very high speeds, and if you're someone who really wants to cruise at very, very high speeds, it gets tiring because you end up with numb hands. But 100 to 130 kilometers an hour all day long, very effortless on this bike, and there's performance to shoot up to 180 or beyond if you want it. But yeah, some people do want a big adventure bike to be able to cruise at crazy high speeds all day long, and this really isn't that motorcycle. The vibrations is one of the reasons, the screen is the other. Now, this is an adjustable screen. You're supposed to be able to do it with one hand by pushing out and pulling up. It's not that easy to do, but it's still something you can do on the move. Now, with this screen, I find that at lower speeds, normal cruising speeds, it works just fine. It actually lets a good amount of cooling air through to you, which in a hot climate like ours is really nice. But again, above 130, you start to get a lot of buffeting on the helmet, and that leaves you with a shaky head. It gets worse when you pull the screen up, more protection from the wind, but more buffeting on the helmet. Now, this is a really personal thing. It depends on how tall you are, where on the motorcycle you're sitting, what kind of a helmet you're wearing. So you may have different results, but in my experience, this is not a great windscreen for very high speeds at a sustained rate. The rest of the ergonomics are really very good. In fact, that is one of the very strong points of the Tiger 900, the GT in particular. It's a great riding position, comfortable, neutral, slight reach to the handlebar, but really all day comfortable. And then there's the seat. Now, This is a new seat, it's slightly higher than before, but it's still only 820 mm. And in the world of big adventure bikes, that is fantastic. If you're a tall rider, you can raise it to 840, there is a provision to do that. But even on this setting, I find myself comfortable spending hours on the bike. And despite that, Triumph has somehow also created a standing up set of ergos that works fairly well. You could rotate the handlebar a little higher, but if you do encounter some off-road riding, you want to get on the pegs, it's actually quite comfortable to do that. As for the seat itself, it's new, it's slightly wider, a little better padded. Now, Tigers have always had fantastic seats, some of the best in the business, and this one is really very good as well. All-day comfort, highly rated. Another improvement that I really like is that Triumph has redone some of the bodywork around this area. This is still very much identifiable as a Tiger, and I don't think most people would notice unless you park the old bike next to the new one. But what I have noticed is that on the old Tiger, there were two panels that would meet right where my knee would make contact, and that was quite uncomfortable. This has been redesigned and it is no longer an issue. That's very nice. One issue that we did have with the old 900 that I think has continued here is the heat coming off these split radiators. Now, there are two radiators, one on each side. It's a fantastic feature because there's no mud coming off the wheel that packs up the radiator, cakes it through the middle and reduces its efficiency. This is something you see in dirt bikes, and I love having it on a big ADV as well. The other positive of this should be that it can deflect the heat away from you, but that doesn't really happen very well on the 900. With the old 900, there was a lot of hot air coming onto your knees. Now, we've been riding it in lovely monsoon weather. It's not hot right now, but I can still feel some hot air coming out. There are these aftermarket little deflectors that you can buy. They just get installed there and push the heat out. As an owner, you may want to invest in that, but I really can't tell you how bad it is right now because the weather is quite nice. But in general, Tiger engines run hot. This is something that has been true since the 800, hasn't really changed in the 900. In traffic, you will feel a lot of heat coming off the engine. You'll feel it on your shins. The engine doesn't overheat, it doesn't shut down, but it runs hot. You have to learn to live with that. The area with the least amount of change on this update is the chassis, and that's absolutely fine because it is a very strong point on the Tiger 900. The frame, the subframe, the suspension, the wheels, the tires, the brakes, all more or less the same. You get a 19-inch front wheel, 17-inch rear. You get 45 mm USD fork, monoshock, 180 mm of travel at the front, 170 mm at the rear. Now, with these specifications, and especially given the fact that the Tiger 900 Rally is another version that's available with much more suspension travel, bigger 21-inch wheels, spoked wheels, that could make you assume that this is simply a road bike, but that's really not the case. Even though this bike is nowhere close to as capable as the 900 Rally, it is actually quite capable off-road. One of the reasons for that is that the suspension is fantastic. Doesn't have a huge amount of travel, but it has excellent control, and that gives you a lot of feedback as a rider. You can also adjust the suspension very easily. You have compression and rebound damping at the top, easy adjusters, and out here, you've got a simple knob for adding or reducing preload. There's also a small screw underneath the shock on the other side for adjusting the rebound. So if you want to make changes, you can do it quite easily, but even on the stock setup, this bike is really very comfortable. I'd maybe add a little more preload and a little more rebound damping to control the rear for off-road riding, but in general, very comfortable out of the box. As for off-road riding, you have to be careful because this bike does not come with any protection, as you can see. The old 900 GT also used to have a plastic sump guard down there that Triumph has removed. It wasn't super heavy duty, but it did serve some protective function, and that is no longer there. But the biggest factor that you need to be careful of is that it's on pure road tires. These are Metzeler Torances. They don't like slushy conditions like we have right now. So if you want to take this off-road, give it some slightly better tires, give it some protection, and you will find that this bike can really do quite a lot. Easily enough to take you up to Ladakh on any sort of adventure tour. But more relevant is that it can take on the worst of our roads even after they have been completely destroyed by the monsoon. That is one of the big pleasures of this bike, in that it's capable to handle anything India can throw at it. This motorcycle is supposed to be the road bike in the Tiger 900 lineup, and in that respect it does a really good job as well. Handling is light, neutral, predictable, very easy to ride. It handles corners very well, stable, doesn't take too much effort, doesn't do anything you don't expect. That being said, it's not really extremely sporty, nothing like a Ducati Multistrada V2, so if you want that sporty road ADV, this is not really it. You will have plenty of fun, but the foot pegs do grind down quite easily. It doesn't take a lot of effort to get them scraping the road. So it's not really a sporty motorcycle, but it is a capable one. The same goes for the brakes. Now, on paper, these are some very fancy Brembo calipers, the kind of stuff you see on superbikes, but the master cylinder is a much simpler unit, and the whole setup has been tuned for strong but natural and reassuring braking. So you will not get superbike sharpness, but you'll get good performance. In fact, that's one of the few chassis-related updates on this bike, is that Triumph has now linked the braking system. So when you use the front brake, it adds in a little rear brake as well. It's quite a natural system. I really wouldn't have noticed it if I didn't read about it on the spec sheet. Works well, adds some more stability to the braking, so that's a good thing. As for features, the big change here is that this bike gets the new 7-inch TFT display from the Tiger 1200, and that's a really nice thing because it gets rid of those weird layouts from the Tiger 900. You now have a clean layout. But it continues the biggest issue from the Tiger 1200, and come here, I will show you. The issue is that this thing takes forever to start up. So there we go. 5 seconds and all we've seen is Tiger. 10 seconds. 12 seconds. 12 seconds for that thing to start up, which is really something Triumph should be fixing. Another issue I have with this motorcycle is that it does not come with a quick shifter as standard. Triumph wants you to pay a lot of money to option one, up and down, and at 14 lakh rupees, I think that really isn't cool. A bike this expensive should have a quick shifter when you've got things like an R15 that gives you a quick shifter at 6-7 times less. Thankfully, the Tiger 900 GT does get the other essential creature comforts that you would expect with a big bike like this. You've got heated grips, you've got cruise control, there is a USB-C charging port out here, there is another power outlet down here, and if you option the heated rider seat and pillion seat, there is a provision for a switch that the pillion can use to heat up their seat. The Tiger 900 range has always been the sweet spot of the big adventure bike scene in India, and this midlife update only sweetens that package because the new bike costs just 20,000 rupees more than the old one. This motorcycle can laugh off the worst that India can throw at it, but it's also very easy to ride and easy to live with. On that second topic, the Tiger 900 has proven to be the personal choice of many hardcore adventure riders, the kind of riders who organize adventure rides for other people to take part in. That's because the Tiger has proven to be able to take a solid beating but continue to be reliable. It isn't even fussy at the petrol pumps. You can just put regular fuel in the bike and it runs just fine. The only one downside that's worth mentioning is that since Bajaj took the Triumph operations over in India, the service and spare parts costs actually went up instead of going down, and they're now about 20 to 30% more expensive. That is a downer, and it also means that this bike will be more expensive to live with than the Japanese adventure bikes from one segment below. Yes, it has a few issues and drawbacks, pretty much like every other motorcycle out there, but there is no doubting the fact that the Tiger 900 GT is a fantastic all-rounder and an easy bike to get along with. And that's why it remains my go-to recommendation for the casual ADV rider who wants something capable but easy to live with and is looking for a premium mid-size ADV.